Hello, all, from Warehouse and Operations as a Career, the podcast where we talk about warehousing and transportation and the many different positions, equipment, and opportunities to be found with a career in operations. I'm Marty T. Hawkins, and I love ops. I've had the privilege of working with and beside some of the best individuals and teams in the business for over 40 years. Each week, we here at WAOC try and share some of our experiences, interview those performing the task at hand, and answer your questions on any topics or comments that you might have sent in to us. Shoot us a message to host@warehouseandoperationsasacareer.com, and we'll have an opinion or find you an answer to your thought, topic, or suggestion. If you enjoy the social scenes, we can be found using that little @ WHSEANDOPS on both Facebook and Twitter. And for you equipment operators out there, we can usually be found hanging out in the Warehouse Equipment Operators Community Group, and that's on Facebook as well. So let's see, I've written down a lot of bullet points for this week, but don't really have anything planned to talk about. Nothing in particular, anyway. Let's see, I see I've written down that we're in week 49 of the year. Gosh, can you believe 2018 is almost over with? Here's a little question that I wrote down. Let's see, it was sent in about 2 weeks ago. He had a few questions about two-wheelers. The gentleman had just switched positions. Looks like that he'd been working as a loader for a large food service distributor for about 6 or 7 months and accepted a driver-helper position. He'd asked if I'd ever used one and what kind that I preferred. You know, I don't remember the episode number, but back in March of 2017, we did a short episode on the driver-helper position. And in June last year, we had a show on the two-wheeler. I think it was called Ops's Most Go-To Piece of Equipment. Be sure to check those two shows out. I think we covered the topics pretty well. At least we had a lot of fun doing them. Anyway, so to answer his question, yes, I've used several. Probably way too many times. I myself prefer the ones made out of magnesium and aluminum. I don't usually mention specific brands, but one of my favorites is the Magliner. One of the suggestions I have is if you're buying, your own, don't go cheap. It's a tool that you're going to be using for work and you're going to be earning money with it. So go ahead and spend the cash and get what you really need. Now you can spend between $200 and upwards of $500 on a really good dolly. You'll want to get the proper wheels for your work conditions, the correct blade or the scoop for the loads that you'll be carrying, and attachments. My gosh, today there's all kinds of attachments. Extenders, different handle designs, really anything can be customized on those tools. There's also some really good breakdown dollies out there. You can really move some freight with the right dolly. I know some delivery drivers that have as many as 5 or 6 different kinds with them every day. One driver helper that I know, I'd call him a professional driver helper, and he's had him a custom one made or custom ordered, and he paid a little over $600 for it. He ordered it with custom wheels, got some really nice groove tires on it, had a handbrake kit put on it, an extended blade, and a custom loop handle was designed for it. Again, I'd suggest you get what you really need, kind of like our shoes and boots. In my opinion, we need the right tools, and we need to be comfortable with them to do our best work, right? Speaking of shoes and boots, if your job or facility requires you to wear steel toes or a good composite capped footwear, get a good pair when you can afford them. The cheaper brands are fine to start out with, but I'd strongly urge you to get a well-built pair when you can afford a little luxury. They'll make a huge difference in your arch area, especially when you're standing and moving around all day long, something like order selecting or forklift driving. As for boots, I always go with the ones with pretty heavy ankle support. They look uncomfortable, but if you're around pallets a lot, say like order selecting in a productivity setting, they're really perfect. Another opinion, I guess. No, we'll really call that one, experience. They've saved my ankles 100 times. I have a note here about dock plates, so let's, keeping with the theme, I guess we'll call it the tools that we use. Let's talk about those for a minute. The gentleman I was speaking with when I made the notation was pointing out how their new dock door system would not let him operate the electric dock plate until the door was fully raised, and he really didn't like that. His job was to place any shorts or items that might have been left off the trailer earlier in the shift, but he had to get them on there before the trailer dispatched. With the new electronic system, the trailer locks had to be engaged, the electric door had to be raised all the way up before the dock plate would come up, providing access to the load. His old way, or the old system, with manual doors and dock plates were twice as fast, he stated, and he could get things loaded out much faster. Anyone have a horror story about the old chain-pulled hydraulic dock plates? I've seen 3 fingers almost pulled off and heard about one actually being ripped from a man's hand. You know how we used to have to grab that big old iron ring and give it a good hard yank to get it to pop the release on the hydraulic chamber, then releasing the plate to come flying up, and we'd take off running up the plate so the lip would catch the edge of the trailer when it came back down. And oh my goodness, anyone ever worked with a drop-in dock plate? One of those used for bridging the space between the dock and a rail car door? I've mashed my fingers several times, and again, I've heard about people losing 1 or 2 fingers trying to position them, get it just correct. Really, most of the improvements that I've seen over the last few years do take a little more time, I guess, but I think we'd all agree they remedy an unsafe situation. I stood there with him, and actually we timed it out. It took 8 seconds for the door to raise. Yep, we could probably sling the door up a few seconds quicker, but then we'd have to make sure that the dock lock was engaged with the ICC bar on the trailer, and then we'd have to raise the ramp. I bet all in the new system is really faster. It just seems slower because we're standing still. We don't have all those other things to do anymore. I personally like anything and any system that's going to make things safer for me. Here's another little note. PPEs. How many of us are required to wear PPEs or some type of personal protective equipment? Some people really consider our footwear as a PPE. Personally, anytime I'm walking around pallets, I just consider it common sense. I guess most PPEs can be related to common sense though, right? I myself like having a high visibility ANSI 3 vest on when I'm out walking the floor, anytime I'm around equipment, especially if I'm going to be out on the front docks or in the aisles walking around. Remember, in a recent episode, we learned how 42% of warehouse accidents happen up on the front docks. Another thing I hear every summer from someone is, somebody will say that their lightweight mesh vest is too hot to wear. And I wear, some fork drivers just don't like to wear them. And I made that mistake a few times. I mean, as a fork operator, we're always looking up in the air. Pallets are dusty. Our forks are going to, knock some of that dust and particles loose when we're retrieving a pallet up from the reserve area. Seems every year I hear about 10 or 12 visits to the clinic. Someone's gotten something in their eyes. If you've ever had to use an eye wash station, you won't want to have to do it again. Speaking of pallets, what about sorting pallets? Now that's real work, taking the good ones and the bad ones, getting them separated, getting them stored. I guess the wooden pallet is the most used tool that we really deal with on a day-to-day basis. Pine pallets, which I hope you never use for anything, at least not for lifting them up into the reserves. Then we have the grade A, or those new oak pallets. The B grades with some damage and repaired runners or slats. Oh, and then the heavy suckers like Pico pallets and Chet pallets. And I guess today we're seeing a much larger volume of plastic pallets floating around. I know delivery drivers love them. They're much easier to just stack up, over to the side of our trailers. Of course, they're much more costly, so I'm sure we're all going to be held accountable for them. Someone is going to be asking questions about them. Shoot us an email about your experiences with pallets. I have 100 stories I could talk about, and I'm sure we'd all like to hear about yours too. So we're approaching another year. There's only 3 more weeks in 2018. With our next few episodes, we'll be reviewing this year's goals that we achieved and planning out our 2019 goals and objectives to achieve those 2019 goals. We'll probably wrap up the year doing just that here at WAOC. I'll reach out to a couple of people that's achieved a few of their goals, talk about how they had planned for them, and maybe get them to share a few that were missed or they didn't quite get there with us. Let's talk a little on planning also. Maybe I'll share a few of my personal ones with the group. Well, that's a wrap for the week. I enjoyed talking from the hip, and I hope I hit upon something that you can relate to. If so, please send us an email and we'll share your story with the group next week. Until then, please be careful on or with our equipment and tools and use our PPEs properly.